Hi, welcome to my happy place. Today we are going to start working on our placemat project. And what we're going to need, I'll just cover this very quickly, 1 yard of fabric for the front, 1 yard for the back, 1/3 of a yard of fabric for our pockets. Batting and SF101 we'll also need a yard of. And we're going to cut all of these, our front, our back, and our batting. We're going to need 4 pieces that measure 19 by 14 inches. We're going to need 4 pockets that measure 9-inch squares, and our SF101 we will also need 4 9-inch squares. This, of course, is all in the instructions. So what you'll see here is that I have got my 9-inch square with my SF101 backing on it, stabilizer. And it doesn't have to be SF101, it can be any kind of stabilizer that you have available. I just like to put the stabilizer on because it gives it a little extra body. Now, the other thing we're going to do is after we get these together, we are going to fold our squares, our 9-inch squares, in half diagonally. And what this is going to be is this is going to be a pocket that's actually going to be stitched onto the corner of the placemat. You could place a napkin in there, you could place their silverware in there, or you could place some flowers in there if it's springtime and they're just coming out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to stitch 2 layers or 2 lines of stay stitching down here. And the reason that I'm doing that is to keep my pocket from stretching when I'm using it. So I am going to put a 1/4 inch top stitching, and I am going to put a 1/2 inch top stitching. Now what you see is I did use a leader for this. The reason I do that is just because, especially when you're doing a point like this, it will go in much easier. I have my feed dogs up. I am using my walking foot, and there is my 1/4 inch. This is where a stiletto comes in very handy. You want to make sure that you keep that distance or seam allowance about the same. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put this back to back, and I'm going to now do a 1/2 inch top stitching. So I'm going to have these 2 layers of top stitching on here, which are going to keep this pocket really nice and stable. And we're just going to go ahead and finish this one. Again, using that stiletto, because what happens when we have a diagonal piece of fabric like this is what tends to happen is these feed dogs quit feeding. Well, these feed dogs continue to feed. On this case, the left side quits feeding, the right side continues, and it will have a tendency to kind of push that fabric to one side or another. If you are using a stiletto, you'll see how much easier it is to keep that seam allowance perfectly straight until you come to the edge of your fabric. And there we go. That's all we needed to do. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll just give you a little peek at this. Here's my first and second lines of stitching. Got them two lines 1/4 inch apart. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to layer my fabric, my batting, and everything else to go ahead and stitch. I'm just going to pull you up a little bit so you can see. Oh, I'll take that back. I have one more step to do before I make that layer. I need to take a top piece, and I am using the same fabric for all the top pieces. And what I want to do is I just want to baste this pocket onto the lower right-hand corner. Now you can use clips or you can use pins if you want to just hold it in place while you're basting that in. So I'm just going to, just a couple pins just to get it to stay where I want it to be. I am going to go ahead and I am going to lengthen my stitch length just a little bit. When we're basting it, it's okay to make the basting stitch a little longer. We are going to be making a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So when we're basting, what is important is we need to stay within that 1/2 inch for our seam allowance. And what I like most about the grid glider is the fact that I don't have to take it off when I am doing just my plain sewing. And it gives me all of these markings here. So I've got this section here where my needle is centered, and then I have a 1/4 inch, I have a 3/8 inch mark, I have a 1/2 inch mark, and a 5/8 inch mark. And of course my 1 inch is way out here. Now the nice thing about this is I know that I'm going to be using this line or this mark here, which is my 1/2 inch. So as long as I baste anywhere from that point to the needle, I know that my basting isn't going to show. So it's just a really, really nice feature. And like I said, I'm just going to baste this in using a little longer stitch length. And as long as I stay within that 1/2 inch, which my mark for that 1/2 inch is right here, you'll see that I have plenty of room to work. I'm going to go ahead and stop down in the corner here, put my needle down. Now I don't have an automatic lift on my machine. It's mechanical. It's a vintage machine. And it doesn't have any of those fancy bells or whistles. Do I have a fancy machine? Yeah, I do. I really do. For ruler work, I really prefer this one. All it does is go straight forwards and straight backwards. I have to do everything else. And it's okay. It really is. Now, if you don't like to have a machine where you have to do all the work, that's fine too. It's not a big deal, not the end of the world. We all have our preferences. We're all different, and that's what makes the world go round. So I have got my pocket now, as you can see, basted onto here. So let's go ahead and let's go and put this sandwich together so that we can make our placemat. What I am doing is I am putting my batting down. I'm just using 80/20 batting. I'm putting the wrong side up, okay? Then I am going to lay my backing fabric. This is a real good fat quarter friendly project because our backing and all of our pieces are going to be 18 or 19 inches by 14 inches. So it's a great way to use up some of those fat quarters. And with my particular project, that's exactly what I'm doing, is using up fat quarters. So every one of the backs of mine is going to be different. Now I am going to lay my top down, right sides together with my bag. Okay. Now, if you want, you can pin. If you want, you can clip, Whatever way works for you, which you feel is the best way for you to hold everything together. The other thing I'm going to do, and you can see here, my cutting is a little bit off here. Not a big deal. It's all going to be trimmed out anyway. It's well within my 1/2 inch seam, and I'm going to be good. What I'm doing here is I'm just putting a couple of pins, and I'm going to put it about 5 inches apart on those pins. So you can see these 2 pins are about 5 inches apart. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch from this pin all the way around, ending at this pin. I'm going to leave this area open. And the reason I'm leaving this area open is so that I can turn the table or the placemat right side out. And what we want is we just want to make sure we can reach in there. No problems. I find 5 inches is good. Do a little more, a little less. It's entirely up to you. So what you're going to see is I've got this fabric is a little outside of the batting here. And like I said, I got a little bit of a bad cut there. I'm not going to get crazy about it. I am going to line that up. Go ahead, put my needle down, and I do like to take my pins out. And I'm going to grab my threads. I think I'm going to grab, there it is. I knew I had a bobbin thread there. I just wasn't sure where it disappeared to. Okay, whoops, got it a little too big there. Get my needle down. I'm going to now shorten up my stitch length to a normal stitch length, which is going to, for me, be between 12 and 15 inches stitches per inch. I'm going to go ahead, and I did not get myself lined up correctly here, so let's try that again. Okay. Take that out. I apologize for that. For some reason I got off of my mark there. Okay, there we go. Now I'm where I need to be. Okay, a few stitches, and then we're going to back up a few stitches. The reason we do this is because that's going to be a stress point. So when we go to turn our project around, what's going to happen is it's going to kind of pull there a little bit. And there we go. Perfect. All right. And now we're just going to go ahead, and you'll see that I am coming into place where I got my cut off a little bit. It's not a problem. There we go. I'm going to go all the way around until I get back to that pin on the same side of the placemat that I started on. Okay. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back and we are going to trim everything out. And I need a couple more stitches here. There we go. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and I will bring you back when I get back to where I need to stop. Okay? So just hang on and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and we are just about finished stitching around our placemat. Here we come to the next pin that we put in when we started. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to back stitch there, and even go ahead and there we go. Put a couple more stitches in, and we're going to take this off. Yep, there we go. Got some long threads here. Definitely want to trim those off. So what we've got here now is we've got our seam allowance coming around, and I want to do some trimming. And why do we trim? We trim to make things go together just a little nicer and give us a sharper corner and a smoother seam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this off at a 45-degree angle. And I'm just going to show you what I mean by that. It's going to come this way. Okay? And what that does is it gives our placemat room when we turn it around. And you don't need to get really, really close. I'm going to go ahead and do that on all four corners. There we go. And if you want, you definitely can trim out some of this batting and some of the other bulk in here. Personally, I don't think it's really necessary, but if you do, this is how I would do it. I would hold my scissors at an angle, either this way or this way. I find I'm right-handed, so going this way is actually easier for me, and then I would go ahead and start trimming. Okay, there we go. A lot of people say, why in the world are you doing this? Well, if you look, the reason that I'm doing it, and I'm going to just bring you in a little closer here, is because what I'm doing is what's called grading a seam. And when we hold our scissors on an angle, every one of these layers comes out a little different length. And so it gives us a smoother transition. So I'm just going to go ahead. Like I said, is it necessary? Not absolutely necessary. Some people like to do it. Some people don't. It's a personal decision, but I'd like you to have that option to know how to grade a seam if you're so inclined. Okay. I'm not going to do the rest. I just wanted to show you that. So now I've got my four corners set up diagonally. And what I'm going to do, the next thing, is to turn it right side out. For this step, you are going to want to have a point turner if you have one. And I know I have one. I'm just not sure where it went. Okay. I'm going to now put my hand in, and where we want to turn this is we want both sides, right sides of our fabric, we want on the outside. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and just start turning and start pulling that fabric out. It doesn't take a lot of time. It's absolutely easy to do. We want to make sure that we get our corners nice and pointy once they're out. Oh, that one's going to go that way. There we go. Here's another corner. I'm just going to push that out with my finger here to get a good start on it. And here we go. See how easy this is? I'm going to go ahead and push this corner out. What I like to do when I push the corners is I'll put my finger into the corner right here. You can see that's where my finger is. Put my thumb here. And when I bring it inside out in that manner, you'll see it gets me almost pointy right there where I want it. Okay, there we go. This one's going to be a little tougher because it's got so many more layers in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start there. I'm going to take my tool or a blunt edge scissors. I would not use a sharp scissors on this simply because, and I'm sorry I just whacked you there with the camera, simply because you can end up going through your fabric. And this is the one you may have to spend a little bit of time maneuvering this to get it nice and pointy. Are you going to get it perfect? No. To be honest with you, it's just not going to happen. You can work with it all day. And you're going to get it close. I mean, that doesn't look bad. That doesn't look bad at all. So now I'm going to come to the next one, and you'll see I already got a pretty good start on that one. Just going to finish getting that straight out. And this is why we don't want to cut those diagonals too close to the stitching, because if we did, when we go to get these points out, it's going to come unstitched in the corner. I've done it. I have done it. And you have to turn your project back inside out. You have to go in and you have to fix it. And that can take time and be frustrating. So I don't want you to have to do that. Okay, there's a nice sharp corner. We've got one more to go. And we're almost there. Nice. There we go. There we go. Nice and sharp. Now we're just going to kind of give this a little bit of a tug. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I'm going to just finger press this down. Then I'm going to manipulate those layers so that I get a nice turn in my seam. And what I mean by that is that when you look from the back, you don't really see the front fabric. And when you look from the front, you see here, and I need to get this side too. And again, this takes just a little bit of time. Just take your time. When you look from the front, you don't see that back fabric. See how nice that looks? When you look from the back, you don't see the front fabric. So once I get all of that done, I'm going to take it to my ironing board and I am going to press it. I am going to press it with steam, and I want to press it really, really good. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do a top stitching around here, all the way around at 1/4 of an inch, including the pocket. Then we're going to do 1/2 of an inch and 1 inch, but we're not going to include the pocket. So what we're going to do is just come inside the pocket like this, and when the pocket then is up where it needs to be, you'll never notice that down there. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to show you how we're going to close this opening and get our top stitching done. So until then, let's quilt.